Staff Sergeant Maya Chen wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her gloved hand, leaving a streak of dirt across her forehead. The Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on forward operating Base Sentinel, turning the air into a shimmering heat mirage that distorted the mountains in the distance. Her hands were raw beneath her gloves, blisters forming on top of blisters from 3 straight hours of shoveling sand into bags that would reinforce the eastern perimeter wall. Each scoop of sand felt heavier than the last, and her shoulders burned with a deep, aching fire that no amount of physical training had prepared her for. The Nightshade unit badge on her tactical vest, a silver crescent moon piercing a dagger, caught the sunlight as she moved, sending brief flashes across the compound. It was a badge fewer than 200 soldiers in the entire United States military war, a badge that represented the most elite reconnaissance and direct action unit in Special Operations Command, a badge that had once filled her with pride every single morning when she'd suited up for missions that would never appear in any official record. Now that same badge felt like an anchor around her neck, dragging her down into obscurity and shame. 2 weeks ago, Maya had been leading a 5-person team through the labyrinthine streets of Kabul on a hostage rescue operation. She'd made decisions in microseconds that had saved 3 journalists from execution. But those same decisions had put Staff Sergeant Joel Martinez in a hospital bed in Germany, with a bullet lodged dangerously close to his spine. The investigative board was still reviewing her actions, dissecting every choice she'd made with the cruel clarity of hindsight and the comfort of safety. They sat in air-conditioned offices 7,000 miles away, analyzing split-second decisions made under fire as if they were chess moves that could be contemplated over coffee. "Chen, those sandbags aren't going to fill themselves." Sergeant First Class Morrison barked from the shade of the supply depot, his own hands conspicuously clean as he supervised from a distance. Morrison had made his feelings about special operators getting what they deserve crystal clear over the past 2 weeks. He seemed to take particular pleasure in assigning Maya the most degrading tasks on base: latrine duty, KP, and now this endless march of sandbag filling that seemed designed more to break her spirit than to actually improve base defenses. Maya didn't respond to Morrison's jab. She simply drove her shovel deeper into the sand pile and continued working. Engaging with him would only make things worse, and she'd learned long ago that the best response to petty tyrants was professional silence. Let her work speak for itself. Let the quality of these sandbags, stacked with precision and care, be her answer to his contempt. Around her, a dozen other soldiers worked on various fortification projects. Most were new arrivals, fresh-faced kids barely out of advanced training who still carried that mixture of excitement and terror that came with their first deployment to a combat zone. They gave Maya's badge curious glances when they thought she wasn't looking, whispering among themselves. She caught fragments of their conversations, speculation about what a Nightshade operator had done to end up on sandbag duty, rumors about the Kabul mission ranging from wildly inaccurate to disturbingly close to the truth. Private Jackson, a lanky kid from Ohio who couldn't have been more than 19, worked the sandbag station next to Maya. He tried to make conversation earlier in the shift, asking respectful questions about her badge and her service. Maya had kept her answers brief but polite. The kid meant well, and there was no reason to take out her frustration on someone who was just trying to be friendly. Now he worked in companionable silence beside her, occasionally stealing glances at her technique and trying to match her efficient rhythm. The distant rumble of engines caught Maya's attention first, a sound that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat after multiple deployments. Heavy vehicles, multiple trucks, moving fast but controlled. She glanced toward the main gate without breaking her rhythm, years of situational awareness making the assessment automatic and unconscious. A convoy was approaching, larger than the usual supply runs that came through Sentinel. The base loudspeaker crackled to life. "Attention all personnel, VIP convoy approaching main gate. All non-essential personnel maintain current positions and activities. I repeat, VIP convoy approaching. Maya felt her stomach tighten slightly. VIP could mean anything from a congressional delegation on a fact-finding mission to a general making inspection rounds. Either way, it meant scrutiny, and scrutiny was the last thing she needed right now. She kept her head down and continued working, focusing on the simple, meditative rhythm of shovel, fill, tie, stack. Scoop the sand, fill the bag, tie it off, add it to the growing wall. Repeat, repeat, repeat. The convoy rolled through the gate with military precision. 3 up-armored Humvees bracketing a command vehicle, dust billowing in their wake. Soldiers snapped to attention across the compound as the vehicles came to a halt near the command center. Maya continued working, her back to the convoy, hoping that whoever was visiting would have more important things to do than notice a disgraced operator filling sandbags in the heat. She was filling her 100th sandbag of the day when she heard Morrison's voice change, the lazy contempt replaced by something sharp and nervous. "Attention! Officer on deck!" Maya straightened automatically, muscle memory from years of service overriding her desire to remain invisible. She turned, coming to attention with the other soldiers, her eyes fixed on the middle distance in proper military bearing. General Harrison stepped from the command vehicle, and Maya's heart skipped a beat. She'd never met the man, but everyone in special operations knew his reputation. 4 stars, 30 years of service spanning every major conflict since Desert Storm. A legend who'd come up through special forces before rising to his current position as commander of all special operations forces in theater. He was a soldier's soldier, known for personally visiting forward operating bases, and for having an almost supernatural ability to assess situations and personnel. The general's eyes swept across the compound with the methodical precision of a man who missed absolutely nothing. His weathered face, creased by decades of sun and command decisions, remained impassive as he took in the fortifications, the soldiers, the overall readiness posture of the base. His aide, a crisp lieutenant colonel, hovered at his shoulder with a tablet, presumably ready to brief him on inspection schedules and facility tour. Maya kept her eyes forward, barely breathing, praying to become invisible among the dozen soldiers standing at attention. She was just another body in uniform, just another soldier doing her job. There was no reason for a 4-star general to notice. General Harrison's gaze locked onto her vest, onto the badge. His eyes narrowed slightly, and Maya watched with sinking dread as his trajectory across the compound altered. He was walking toward her, directly toward her. The lieutenant colonel tried subtly to redirect him toward the command center, gesturing toward the building where the base commander undoubtedly waited with prepared briefings and PowerPoint presentations. Harrison ignored him completely. The general stopped 3 feet in front of Maya, his eyes moving from the Nightshade badge to her face. Up close, he was shorter than she'd expected, maybe 5'10", but he radiated an intensity that made him seem much larger. His eyes were gray-blue, sharp as surgical steel, missing nothing. Maya could feel him assessing her, the condition of her uniform, the quality of her posture, the barely healed scar above her left eyebrow from Kabul, the raw state of her hands, the wall of precisely stacked sandbags behind her. "Staff Sergeant," his voice cut through the desert heat like a blade, quiet but carrying absolute authority. "Your name?" Maya's throat went dry, but her voice came out steady, years of training overriding her nervousness. "Chen, sir. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen, Nightshade Unit." Something flickered in Harrison's eyes, recognition, perhaps, or calculation. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. Morrison shifted nervously in the background, suddenly very interested in the quality of his own work. "I knew Captain Rebecca Torres," Harrison said quietly, and Maya felt the words hit her like a physical blow. "Your team leader, before Kabul." Torres. Captain Rebecca Torres, who trained Maya personally, who'd been the finest operator and leader Maya had ever served under. Torres, who died in the same mission that had put Martinez in the hospital and Maya on sandbag duty. Torres, whose last words had been commending Maya's actions to command, a testimony that the investigative board seemed determined to ignore. Maya's vision blurred slightly, but she blinked hard, maintaining her composure. "Yes, sir, Captain Torres was. She was the best of us, sir." General Harrison nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. "She spoke very highly of you, Staff Sergeant. Told me you were the finest operator she'd ever had the privilege to train. Said you had instincts that couldn't be taught, only recognized and refined." He paused, glancing at the sandbags, then back to Maya. When he spoke again, his voice carried a question that held layers of meaning. "So tell me, Staff Sergeant Chen, why exactly are you filling sandbags?" General Harrison stood motionless, waiting for Maya's answer with the patience of a man who had interrogated enemy commanders and debriefed presidents. The question hung in the scorching air between them like a live grenade. Maya's mind raced through possible responses, each one feeling inadequate or insubordinate. The truth was complicated, messy, wrapped in layers of bureaucracy and second-guessing that she wasn't sure a general, even one with Harrison's reputation, would want to hear while standing in the middle of a forward operating base. "I'm assigned to base maintenance pending the outcome of an ongoing investigation, sir," Maya finally replied, her voice carefully neutral, her eyes still fixed on the middle distance beyond Harrison's shoulder. It was the safest answer, the one that gave facts without editorializing, without defending herself or casting blame. Harrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He glanced towards Sergeant First Class Morrison, who suddenly looked like he wanted to melt into the desert sand. "An investigation," Harrison repeated, his tone flat. "Into the Kabul hostage rescue operation 2 weeks ago, the one where 3 American journalists were extracted from an insurgent stronghold, the one where every single hostage survived and returned home to their families." It wasn't a question, but Maya nodded anyway. "Yes, sir." "The one where Staff Sergeant Joel Martinez sustained injuries while protecting a civilian who panicked during extraction," Harrison continued, and Maya's eyes flickered with surprise. How did he know these details? The mission had been classified at the highest levels. "The one where you made the tactical decision to breach 30 seconds ahead of schedule based on real-time intelligence indicating imminent execution of the hostages." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Every word Harrison spoke was accurate, but hearing it laid out so plainly by a 4-star general made the whole situation feel surreal. "Sir, yes, sir. That's correct." Harrison's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened fractionally. "And for bringing home 3 American civilians and all 5 members of your team alive, you're filling sandbags while bureaucrats who have never heard a shot fired in anger question your judgment." It wasn't a question this time either, but Maya felt compelled to defend the process, even though every fiber of her being resented it. "Sir, the investigation is standard protocol when there are injuries during." "I'm aware of the protocol, Staff Sergeant," Harrison interrupted, but his tone wasn't harsh. If anything, it carried a weight of understanding that made Maya's throat tighten. "I helped write some of those protocols, back when I thought they'd be applied with common sense and appreciation for the realities of combat. I was apparently optimistic." The lieutenant colonel at Harrison's shoulder cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, the base commander is waiting in the TOC for your briefing. We're already 7 minutes behind schedule." Harrison didn't even glance at his aide. His eyes remained locked on Maya, studying her with an intensity that made her feel like every decision she'd ever made was being x-rayed and analyzed. "Colonel Bennett can wait," Harrison said dismissively. "Right now, I'm more interested in why one of our finest operators is being wasted on manual labor." Morrison stepped forward, apparently deciding that defending the chain of command was worth risking the general's attention. "Sir, Staff Sergeant Chen is assigned to my detail under orders from." I wasn't addressing you, Sergeant, Harrison said, his voice dropping several degrees in temperature without increasing in volume. The effect was immediate and devastating. Morrison snapped his mouth shut and took an involuntary step backward. Harrison still hadn't looked at him. Staff Sergeant Chen, you and I are going to have a conversation. Somewhere with air conditioning and privacy. That's not a request. Maya's pulse quickened. A private conversation with a four-star general could go in countless directions, none of which she could predict. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Harrison finally turned to his aide. Colonel, inform the base commander that I'll be delayed by 15 minutes. Staff Sergeant Chen will be accompanying me to the command center. He glanced back at Morrison with an expression that could freeze plasma. And find out who issued the orders placing a Nightshade operator on sandbag duty. I want a name and the rationale in writing on my desk within the hour. Sir, I believe that was Lieutenant Colonel Hendricks, the XO, acting on recommendations from the investigating, the aide began. Then get me Hendricks, Harrison interrupted, and tell him to bring the investigation file, all of it. Maya felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in 2 weeks, hope, but she immediately suppressed it. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to disappointment. She'd learned that lesson thoroughly over the past 14 days of degrading assignments and pitying looks from other soldiers. Whatever Harrison wanted to discuss, she needed to approach it with realistic expectations and professional detachment. Staff Sergeant, with me, Harrison ordered, already striding toward the command center with the confident gait of a man who expected his orders to be followed without question. Maya fell into step behind him, acutely aware of the stares from every soldier in the compound. Private Jackson's eyes were wide as saucers. Morrison looked like he'd swallowed something toxic. The other soldiers on sandbag duty had stopped working entirely, watching this unprecedented scene unfold. A four-star general didn't personally pull enlisted soldiers off work details for private conversations. This kind of direct intervention bypassed at least 7 layers of military hierarchy and protocol. As they walked, Harrison spoke without looking back at her. Captain Torres contacted me 3 days before Kabul. Did you know that? Maya's steps faltered slightly before she caught herself. No, sir, I wasn't aware. She wanted my advice on a tactical problem, Harrison continued, his pace never slowing as they approached the command center. A theoretical scenario involving hostages held in a fortified position with limited intelligence and a ticking clock. She didn't tell me it was an actual mission, operational security and all that, but I knew Rebecca well enough to read between the lines. They reached the command center entrance, where 2 guards snapped to attention. Harrison returned their salutes absently and pulled open the door, gesturing for Maya to enter first. The blast of air conditioning hit her like a physical force after hours in the desert heat. The interior of the command center was dim and cool, filled with computer terminals, radio equipment, and detailed maps of the surrounding territory. Conference Room 2, Harrison directed, pointing down a narrow corridor. The small one. Make sure we're not disturbed, he added to his aide, who nodded and peeled off toward the Tactical Operations Center where the base commander waited. Maya entered the conference room, a cramped space with a battered table, 6 chairs, and a whiteboard covered in logistics notes from some previous meeting. Harrison closed the door behind them and gestured for her to sit. She did, her mind still reeling from the rapid sequence of events. 20 minutes ago, she'd been anonymously filling sandbags. Now she was alone in a room with one of the most powerful military commanders in theater. Harrison remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes distant as if he were looking at something far beyond the conference room walls. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, almost contemplative. I told Captain Torres that if her theoretical scenario was real, the breach timing would depend entirely on the ground commander's assessment of threat evolution. I told her that in fluid situations, pre-planned timing becomes irrelevant. The commander on scene has information that no one else possesses: the sound of voices, the body language of hostiles, the 1,000 micro-indicators that can't be communicated through radio or included in intelligence briefings. He turned to face Maya directly, and she saw something in his expression that shocked her: not judgment, not skepticism, but recognition. The look of one combat leader acknowledging another. I told her that the best operators trust their instincts, make the call, and live with the consequences, good or bad, because hesitation kills more people than bold action ever has. Harrison pulled out a chair and sat down across from Maya, his weathered hands folding on the table between them. So now I'm going to ask you a question, Staff Sergeant Chen, and I want you to answer it honestly, not politically. Not as someone trying to navigate an investigation, but as an operator telling another operator the truth. Maya's mouth went dry, but she nodded. Yes, sir. Harrison leaned forward slightly, his gray-blue eyes boring into hers. When you made the decision to breach early in Kabul, in that exact moment before you gave the order, did you believe it was the right call? The question stripped away all the bureaucratic layers, all the second-guessing, all the careful language she'd been using with investigators. It cut straight to the core of who she was as a soldier and a leader. Maya didn't hesitate. Yes, sir, absolutely. General Harrison leaned back in his chair, his weathered face unreadable as he studied Maya's expression. The conference room's fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, and somewhere in the distance, the muffled sounds of base operations filtered through the walls. Maya kept her hands flat on the table, resisting the urge to fidget under the general's penetrating gaze. Her answer hung in the air between them, simple, direct, unwavering. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Tell me about those 30 seconds, Harrison said finally, his voice quiet but commanding. Not the sanitized version you gave the investigators, not the official report with all the careful language and tactical justifications. Tell me what you saw, what you felt, what made you override the mission timeline. Maya took a slow breath, her mind traveling back to that sweltering Kabul night 2 weeks ago. She could still smell it, the acrid combination of diesel fuel, rotting garbage, and fear that permeated the narrow alleyway where her team had staged for the breach. She could still feel the weight of her rifle, the slight tremor in her hands that always came in the final seconds before action, the way her heart had thundered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. We were positioned on the east side of the compound, Maya began, her voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath the surface. 3-story structure, reinforced doors, minimal windows. Our intel said the hostages were being held on the 2nd floor, northwest corner room. The plan called for simultaneous breach at 0230 hours. That gave us maximum darkness and minimum civilian presence in the surrounding streets. Harrison nodded but didn't interrupt. His eyes never left her face. At 0228, 2 minutes before go time, I heard voices through the 2nd floor window, agitated voices, arguing in Pashto. Maya's hands curled slightly on the table, remembering. Our translator, Sergeant Ahmadi, was monitoring through directional audio. He went pale. Told me they were arguing about moving the hostages immediately. One of the insurgents was convinced that American forces had located them and were coming. He wanted to relocate the hostages to a secondary site across the city. The memory crystallized with painful clarity. Staff Sergeant Joel Martinez positioned at her left shoulder, Captain Rebecca Torres on the radio coordinating with Overwatch, Specialist Chen covering their 6 with the kind of alert intensity that kept teams alive. The night had been absolutely still, as if the entire city was holding its breath. Torres asked for confirmation, Maya continued. Ahmadi translated again. They were ordering the hostages to stand up, getting ready to move them. I could hear furniture scraping, someone crying. One of the journalists was begging them not to move her. She was terrified. Maya's jaw tightened. Intelligence told us the secondary site was a known execution location. If those hostages left that building, they weren't coming back alive. Harrison's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. recognition, perhaps, of impossible choices made in impossible circumstances. I had maybe 10 seconds to decide, Maya said, her voice dropping. Wait for the planned breach time and risk losing the hostages entirely, or go early with a team that had trained for synchronized timing, potentially compromising the entire operation. Torres was calling it up the chain, requesting permission to adjust timeline. But chain of command was 3 layers deep and 7,000 miles away. They'd need at least 2 minutes to make a decision, get authorization, relay it back to us. She could still hear Tor's voice crackling through the comms. Nightshade actual to Overwatch, requesting immediate authorization for timeline adjustment, over. And the maddeningly calm response from some officer in a climate-controlled tactical operations center on the other side of the world. Overwatch copies, stand by for authorization, maintain current posture. I heard one of the insurgents chamber around, Maya said quietly. That specific sound, metal on metal, that you can't mistake for anything else. And I heard one of the hostages. Later I learned it was Jennifer Hartley, the Reuters correspondent. I heard her scream. Not words, just pure terror. Maya's hands were trembling slightly now, but she didn't try to hide it. This was the truth Harrison had asked for, unvarnished and raw. I looked at Tors. She was still on the radio, still trying to get authorization from people who were studying satellite feeds and operational protocols instead of listening to a woman scream for her life. And Tors looked back at me with this expression I'll never forget. She didn't say anything, didn't give me an order. She just nodded, the smallest movement of her head. Permission. Trust. Whatever happened next, she was backing my call. Harrison's fingers drummed once on the table, a brief staccato that broke the tension momentarily. And Martinez. Joel didn't hesitate, Maya said, and despite everything, a small smile touched her lips. I signaled the new timing, immediate breach, 15 seconds. He checked his weapon, looked at me and said, about damn time. Let's go get our people. That's the kind of soldier Joel Martinez is, sir. That's the kind of team Tors built. The general's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Walk me through the breach. Maya closed her eyes briefly, seeing it all unfold again in tactical slow motion. Ochoa blew the door at 0229. Perfect charge, clean entry. We went in fast, standard room clearing exactly as trained. First floor was clear, minimal resistance. 2 hostiles neutralized in the stairwell. We reached the second floor and I could hear the chaos in the northwest room. They knew we were coming. Her breathing quickened slightly, adrenaline bleeding through even in memory. Tors took point with me. We breached the door and the scene was exactly what I'd feared. 3 hostages on their knees, 4 insurgents, 2 with weapons already raised. The hostages were zip-tied, blindfolded. Jennifer Hartley had a gun literally pressed against the back of her head. Time slowed down the way it always does in those moments. I acquired the target threatening Hartley. Tors took the one on the left. Martinez came through behind us, providing cover. The hostages were screaming, the insurgents were screaming. Everything was chaos and noise and movement. Maya opened her eyes, meeting Harrison's gaze directly. We neutralized all 4 threats in under 3 seconds. The hostages were terrified but unharmed. We started extraction procedures, cutting zip ties, removing blindfolds, doing rapid medical assessments. That's when everything went wrong. Harrison leaned forward, the 4th hostile. Yes, sir, Maya confirmed, her voice tight. Intelligence said 4 insurgents total in the compound. There were 5. The 5th was in the adjacent room, heard the breach, and came through the connecting door while we were focused on securing the hostages. He opened fire on full automatic from maybe 15 feet away. The sound of that AK-47 still haunted Maya's dreams, the distinctive crack of rounds ripping through confined space, the impact of bullets hitting concrete walls and wooden furniture, the wet sound of one finding flesh. Martinez saw him first, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper now. Jennifer Hartley had frozen, just completely locked up in shock. She was standing directly in the line of fire, not moving, not responding to commands. Joel didn't think. He just moved, threw himself between her and the shooter, took 3 rounds, shoulder, ribs, and one that came so close to his spine that the surgeons in Germany said another millimeter and he'd have been paralyzed. Tears threatened at the corners of Maya's eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Tors neutralized the 5th hostile. I got Hartley moving. We completed extraction with Martinez on a stretcher, bleeding badly but conscious. He was making jokes, sir, apologizing for messing up his uniform. That's the kind of man we left behind in that hospital bed. Harrison was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the story. When he spoke, his voice carried a depth of understanding that only came from personal experience with the same impossible choices. And Captain Tors. Maya's composure finally cracked just slightly. We were 3 blocks from extraction when the IED hit our vehicle. Buried explosive, probably meant for a different target, but we drove right over it. Tors was in the front passenger seat. She died before we could get her to medical support. The hostages all survived without serious injury. Martinez survived. Our team survived. But Tors. She couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Harrison nodded slowly, his expression grave. The investigation board, Maya said, anger creeping into her voice now. They want to know why I breached early without authorization. Why I didn't wait for command approval. They're questioning whether Tors' death and Martinez's injuries were the result of my reckless disregard for established protocol. That's the actual phrase they used in their preliminary findings, sir. Reckless disregard. Harrison's jaw tightened visibly. They're evaluating a combat decision from the comfort and safety of hindsight, without any of the context or pressure you faced in that moment. Yes, sir, Maya said bitterly. They've got transcripts and timelines and satellite imagery. They can see exactly where everyone was positioned, exactly when each decision was made. They can count the seconds and measure the distances and calculate the probabilities. What they can't see is Jennifer Hartley's face when she realized she was about to be executed. They can't hear the desperation in her voice. They can't feel the certainty I had that, if we waited even 30 more seconds, those hostages would have been dead or gone. Harrison stood abruptly, walking to the whiteboard and staring at the logistical notes there without really seeing them. His shoulders were rigid with tension. When he turned back to face Maya, his expression had hardened into something resolute and decisive. Staff Sergeant Chen, I'm going to ask you one more question, and I need you to think carefully before you answer, Harrison said, his voice carrying the weight of command decisions that had shaped careers and operations. If you were in that exact situation again, with the exact same intelligence and the exact same timeline and the exact same risks, knowing everything that happened afterward, Tors' death, Martinez's injuries, the investigation, all of it, would you make the same call? Maya didn't hesitate, not even for a heartbeat. Yes, sir, every single time. 3 people are alive because we breached when we did. That's what matters. General Harrison smiled for the first time since entering the room. It was a hard smile, warrior's smile, the expression of a man who recognized kindred spirit forged in the same fires. Good. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Because, Staff Sergeant, I didn't come to Fob Sentinel for a routine inspection. General Harrison moved to the conference room door, locked it with a decisive click, and returned to the table. The sound of that lock engaging sent a clear message. Whatever was about to be discussed was not for casual interruption or unauthorized ears. Maya straightened in her chair, her exhaustion from hours of sandbag duty suddenly forgotten, replaced by a sharp alertness that came from years of special operations training. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels, Harrison began, pulling a slim folder from inside his jacket. He placed it on the table between them, his hand resting on top as if weighing whether to continue. Under normal circumstances, an operator under active investigation wouldn't be read into an operation like this. But circumstances are anything but normal, and I didn't build a 30-year career by letting bureaucracy override tactical necessity. Maya's pulse quickened. She could see the tension in Harrison's shoulders, the way his jaw worked as he calculated risks and made real-time decisions about trust and capability. This was a commander preparing to roll the dice, and somehow Maya had become part of the equation. 72 hours ago, we received a flash traffic alert from CIA, Harrison continued, flipping open the folder to reveal satellite imagery of a compound somewhere in rugged mountain terrain. One of their operatives, Khalsin Cypher, has been compromised. He's currently being held by a Taliban cell approximately 40 kilometers northwest of here, deep in territory we haven't operated in openly for over a year. Maya leaned forward, her trained eyes automatically analyzing the imagery. The compound was significantly larger than the Kabul target, maybe 5 or 6 buildings arranged in a defensive cluster, surrounded by high walls and positioned on elevated terrain that provided natural defensive advantages. Approach routes were limited, exposure was significant, and extraction would be a nightmare even under optimal conditions. Cypher has been undercover for 18 months, Harrison said, his finger tracing the compound's perimeter on the photograph. Deep cover, embedded with a network that's been feeding us intelligence on weapons trafficking, planned attacks, and Taliban command structure. He's one of the most valuable assets we have in this entire theater. The intelligence he's provided has prevented at least 3 major attacks and saved countless lives. What happened? Maya asked, her tactical mind already running through scenarios. Someone talked, Harrison said grimly. We're still tracking down the leak, but 3 days ago, Cypher's contact missed 2 scheduled check-ins. Yesterday, we received intercepted communications confirming that the Taliban has him and knows exactly who he is. They're interrogating him, and it's only a matter of time before they either break him or decide to make an example of him for propaganda purposes. Maya studied the imagery more closely. What's the extraction window? That's the problem, Harrison said, and the weight in his voice told Maya everything she needed to know. Our signals intelligence suggests they're planning to move him within the next 48 hours, possibly to Pakistan, possibly to a more secure facility deeper in the mountains, possibly to execute him on camera for their recruiting networks. Once he's moved, we lose him. The window for extraction is closing fast. And Nightshade has a team ready to go, Maya said, already seeing where this was heading and why Harrison was telling her any of this. Harrison's expression darkened. Had a team ready to go. Nightshade Team 6 was pre-positioned in Germany, fully briefed and equipped for exactly this type of operation. They were supposed to be wheels up 12 hours ago. He paused, and Maya could see genuine frustration in his eyes. Their insertion aircraft developed catastrophic mechanical failures during pre-flight checks. Multiple redundant systems failed simultaneously, the kind of failure that almost never happens but grounds the entire asset when it does. How long until they can get replacement aircraft? Maya asked, though part of her already knew the answer wouldn't be good. 72 hours minimum, Harrison said. They're working to expedite, pulling strings, calling in favors, but the reality is that specialized aircraft with the necessary stealth capabilities and range aren't just sitting around waiting for missions. By the time Nightshade Team 6 gets here, Cypher will be long gone or dead. The pieces were falling into place in Maya's mind, and what they were forming made her breath catch. Sir, you can't be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything yet, Harrison interrupted, but his eyes told a different story. I'm presenting you with a tactical problem, Staff Sergeant. We have an asset who will die or disappear within 48 hours. We have a specialized team that won't arrive in time. And we have a forward operating base full of capable soldiers who weren't trained for this type of operation, but who are all we have in the required time frame. Maya stared at the satellite imagery, her mind already running calculations. Personnel assessment, training timelines, equipment availability, approach vectors, extraction protocols. It was an insane proposition. Nightshade teams train for months or years to execute operations like this with precision and minimal casualties. The idea of putting together an ad hoc team from regular infantry and support personnel, giving them less than 2 days to prepare, and sending them into hostile territory against a hardened target was tactically unsound at best and suicidal at worst. "Sir, with all due respect," Maya began carefully, "what you're describing would require selecting and training a team in approximately 36 hours to execute an operation that Nightshade would spend weeks planning. The risk factors are enormous. The probability of casualties is high. The chances of mission failure are significant," Harrison finished for her. "I'm aware of all of that, Staff Sergeant. I've run the numbers, consulted with my tactical advisors, and explored every alternative. Standard Special Operations doctrine says we should wait for the proper team with proper preparation. By-the-book thinking says we abort or delay until we have optimal conditions." He leaned forward, his eyes boring into Maya's. "But by-the-book thinking also says you should have waited for authorization before breaching in Kabul." How did that work out? The parallel was obvious and intentional. Maya felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders, the same impossible choice, just on a larger scale with higher stakes. Follow protocol and watch someone die, or take decisive action and risk everything. "If I authorize this operation," Harrison continued, "I'm betting my career that an operator currently under investigation for violating protocol can select and train a team of non-specialized personnel to execute a high-risk extraction in enemy territory with minimal preparation time. If it goes wrong, we don't just lose Cypher. We potentially lose an entire team. I lose my stars, and you spend the rest of your career in Leavenworth for the soldiers who die under your command." "And if we do nothing?" Maya asked quietly. "Then Cypher dies, 18 months of intelligence work is compromised, and we lose one of our best assets in theater," Harrison said flatly. "The Taliban gets a propaganda victory, our intelligence networks in the region take a massive hit, and future sources think twice before working with us because they know we can't protect our own people." The room fell silent except for the humming fluorescent lights and the distant sounds of base operations. Maya's mind was racing through the tactical challenges, building a team from scratch, compressed training timeline, limited intelligence on the target, unknown number of hostiles, difficult terrain, complex extraction under potentially heavy fire. Every aspect of the operation screamed danger and difficulty. But then she thought about Cypher, whoever he was, sitting in a cell knowing that his own people might not be coming for him. She thought about the 18 months he'd spent in deep cover, risking his life daily to provide intelligence that saved others. She thought about Captain Tor's final nod in Kabul, that moment of trust and permission to make the hard call. "What assets do we have available?" Maya asked, and she saw Harrison's expression shift, the faintest hint of approval, the recognition that she was engaging with the problem rather than running from it. Harrison pulled out additional documents from the folder. "FOB Sentinel has approximately 200 personnel at full complement. Most are standard infantry, logistics, and support. We have one Black Hawk helicopter with a crew chief who's rated for combat insertions. We have standard small arms, some explosives, communications equipment, and tactical gear. Nothing specialized, nothing exotic. What we have in equipment, we lack in training and experience for this type of operation." "What about air support, artillery, quick reaction force if things go sideways?" Maya asked, already knowing these answers too but needing to hear them confirmed. "Minimal," Harrison admitted. "We can get air support within 20 minutes if absolutely necessary, but the target location is in a politically sensitive area. Overt military action could create diplomatic complications that go way above my pay grade. The preference is for this to be fast, quiet, and invisible, in and out before anyone knows we were there." So a team of non-specialized soldiers executing a specialized operation in hostile territory with limited support and a compressed timeline, Maya summarized. "Sir, You understand what you're asking is borderline impossible. I understand I'm asking you to do what you did in Kabul, Harrison said quietly. Make the hard call, trust your instincts, and lead soldiers into danger, because it's the right thing to do even when the odds are terrible and the risk is enormous. Maya looked down at the satellite imagery again, her eyes tracing the compound's layout, the approach routes, the defensive positions. Her mind was already identifying potential team members from the soldiers she'd observed over the past 2 weeks. The medic who stayed calm under pressure during a medevac drill, the communications specialist who could troubleshoot any technical problem, the young marksman who never missed on the range, the crew chief who flew helicopters like they were extensions of her own body. If I do this, Maya said slowly, I need complete operational authority. No oversight from the investigation board, no second-guessing from command, no interference from Morrison or anyone else. I pick my team, I plan the operation, I make the tactical calls in real time. If this is going to work at all, it has to be done my way. Harrison nodded immediately. You'll have it. I'm issuing orders right now reinstating you to full active duty status, suspending the investigation pending mission completion, and granting you operational command of what we're calling Operation Silent Guardian. You report directly to me and only to me. Everyone else on this base, regardless of rank, follows your instructions as if they came from my mouth. And if soldiers die because of my decisions, Maya asked, voicing the fear that sat like a stone in her chest. If this goes wrong and we lose people? Harrison's expression was grave but unflinching. Then we both live with it, just like you're living with Tor's death and Martinez's injuries, just like I'm living with every soldier who died following my orders over 30 years. That's the weight of command, Staff Sergeant. Nobody ever said it would be easy or fair, but someone has to make the call, and right now, that someone is you. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the full magnitude of what she was accepting. 36 hours to build a team. 36 hours to plan an operation that should take weeks. 36 hours to prepare soldiers for something that might kill them all. And at the end of it, one chance to bring home an asset whose intelligence had saved countless lives. She thought about Captain Torres one more time, about that final nod of trust and permission. Torres had believed in her, had trained her, had trusted her to make the hard calls. If Torres were here right now, Maya knew exactly what she'd say. Stop overthinking it, Chen. You know what needs to be done, so do it. Maya looked up at General Harrison, her jaw set with determination. I'll need access to personnel files, equipment manifests, and complete intelligence on the target. I'll need the authority to pull any soldier from any duty assignment. And I'll need everyone to understand that for the next 36 hours, they belong to me completely. Harrison was already pulling out his radio. You'll have everything you need within the hour. Personnel files, intelligence briefings, equipment access, all of it. I'll make the announcement to the base personally. He paused, extending his hand across the table. Good luck, Staff Sergeant Chen. Bring our people home. Maya shook his hand firmly, feeling the weight of command settling onto her shoulders like armor. Yes, sir, we will. As Harrison unlocked the door and strode out to begin making the arrangements, Maya remained seated for a moment, staring at the satellite imagery of the compound that would either redeem her career or end it permanently. Somewhere in that cluster of buildings, a CIA operative named Cypher was waiting, hopping, maybe even praying that someone was coming for him. Hold on, Maya whispered to the photograph. We're coming, just hold on a little longer. Then she stood, straightened her uniform, and walked out to begin the impossible task of turning regular soldiers into an elite extraction team in 36 hours. The clock was already ticking. At precisely 400 hours, Maya stood in Hangar 7, a cavernous structure that housed maintenance equipment, supply pallets, and currently, her entire future. The hangar's overhead lights created harsh shadows across the concrete floor, and the pre-dawn chill made her breath visible in small clouds. She'd spent the previous 8 hours reviewing every personnel file on FOB Sentinel, watching soldiers during their duties, and making notes about capabilities, temperament, and potential. General Harrison had been true to his word. She had complete access and complete authority. Now came the hard part, convincing 5 strangers to trust her with their lives. The 5 soldiers filed in looking confused, exhausted, and more than a little apprehensive. They'd been roused from sleep with terse orders to report immediately to Hangar 7 in full tactical gear. No questions, no delays. Maya watched them enter, nodding body language and reactions. Some moved with alert purpose despite the early hour. Others were still rubbing sleep from their eyes but had clearly made an effort to present themselves properly. Corporal James Deshawn arrived first, his medical kit already slung over his shoulder even though no one had specified he'd need it. Maya had watched him 3 days ago during a training exercise when a soldier had suffered a severe allergic reaction to a bee sting. While others had panicked or frozen, Deshawn had administered an EpiPen with steady hands, monitored vitals, and kept up a calm, reassuring dialogue that had kept the soldier conscious and stable until the medevac arrived. He was 26, from Detroit, with 3 deployments under his belt and a reputation for being unflappable under pressure. Specialist Anna Volkov came next, her slight frame deceptive given her reputation as the best communications specialist on base. She was only 24 but had a master's degree in electrical engineering from MIT and had enlisted specifically for the technical challenges military service offered. Maya had discovered that Volkov had twice identified and patched critical vulnerabilities in the base's encrypted communications network, preventing potential intelligence breaches. She moved with precise, economical movements, her dark eyes already assessing the hangar and the other personnel with analytical intensity. Private First Class Marcus Webb shuffled in third, and Maya's heart clenched slightly at his youth. He was 22, looked about 19, with a baby face that probably got him carded at every bar he'd ever entered. But Maya had spent 2 hours yesterday watching him on the rifle range, and what she'd seen had been extraordinary. Marcus could place rounds through a target the size of a quarter at 800 meters in variable wind conditions. More importantly, she'd watched him help a struggling new recruit improve her shooting stance with patience and genuine encouragement. Technical skill mattered, but character mattered more. Sergeant Louis Ochoa was fourth, moving with the loose-limbed confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. At 31, he was the oldest of the group, with a scarred face that told stories of close calls and hard lessons learned. His personnel file indicated he'd been a civilian demolitions expert before enlisting, working in mining and construction. He joined the Army at 28, wanting to blow things up for a better reason than profit, according to his enlistment interview. His efficiency reports praised his creativity and problem-solving abilities, noting that he approached demolitions like an art form rather than just a destructive task. Staff Sergeant Patricia Pat Nguyen arrived last, and Maya felt a surge of confidence at her selection. Pat was 29, a crew chief and pilot who'd logged over 1,000 hours in combat zones. Her file contained multiple commendations for flying medevac missions under fire, inserting and extracting teams in impossible conditions, and once landing a damaged Black Hawk with failing hydraulics so smoothly that her passengers didn't realize anything was wrong until after they disembarked. She had a reputation for being fearless, skilled, and completely unflappable, exactly what Maya needed. The 5 stood in a rough line, their expressions ranging from curious to wary. Maya could see them stealing glances at her Nightshade badge, making connections, wondering what a special operations soldier wanted with them at 4 in the morning. At ease, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly in the hangar's acoustic space. I know you're confused and probably wondering why you're here instead of asleep. I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to give you a choice that you need to make right now. She paused, making eye contact with each of them in turn. Deshawn stood relaxed but alert. Volkov's eyes were sharp and focused. Marcus looked nervous but determined. Ochoa seemed mildly amused, as if curious to see where this was going. Pat's expression was professionally neutral, waiting for information before forming judgments. "My name is Staff Sergeant Maya Chen, Nightshade Unit," Maya began. "2 weeks ago, I led a hostage rescue operation in Kabul that saved 3 American civilians but resulted in injuries to one of my team members. I've been under investigation since then, relegated to manual labor while bureaucrats decided whether I made the right call under impossible circumstances." She saw recognition flash across several faces. They'd heard the rumors, the whispered stories about the Nightshade operator filling sandbags. "Yesterday, General Harrison personally intervened and gave me operational command of a time-sensitive, high-risk mission," Maya continued. "We have a CIA operative, Coulson Cipher, who's been compromised and is currently being held by Taliban forces approximately 40 kilometers from here. Intelligence suggests he has maybe 48 hours before he's either executed or moved beyond our reach. The specialized team that should be handling this extraction won't arrive in time. Which means we're going to do it instead." The silence that followed was profound. Marcus's eyes went wide. Ochoa's amusement vanished, replaced by sharp attention. Deshawn's jaw tightened. Volkov tilted her head slightly, already processing tactical implications. Pat's expression didn't change at all, which somehow made her seem even more competent. "Let me be absolutely clear about what I'm asking," Maya said, her voice hard and honest. "I'm asking you to execute a mission that Nightshade teams train months to perform. I'm asking you to do it with approximately 36 hours of preparation instead of months. I'm asking you to infiltrate a fortified compound in hostile territory, extract a high-value asset who may be injured or incapacitated, and get out alive while potentially under heavy fire from an unknown number of enemy combatants." She let that sink in for a moment, watching their reactions. "The probability of casualties is high," Maya continued, not sugarcoating anything. "The margin for error is essentially zero. If anything goes wrong, if our intelligence is bad, if the enemy is more prepared than expected, if equipment fails, if someone makes a mistake, people could die. You could die. And I need you to understand that right now before you make any decisions." Marcus swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. Deshawn's hands had moved to his medical kit unconsciously, fingers touching the familiar equipment as if drawing comfort from it. Ochoa was studying Maya with new intensity, reassessing her completely. Volkov's expression remained analytical, already running probability calculations in her head. Pat stood absolutely still, her pilot's training evident in her ability to remain calm while processing critical information. "So here's the choice," Maya said. "I selected each of you for specific reasons based on your skills, your performance under pressure, and your character. But this isn't a regular assignment. This is completely voluntary. If any of you want to walk out of this hangar right now, you can do so without any negative consequences to your career or reputation. No judgment, no questions asked. You'll return to your regular duties and never hear about this mission again." She paused, her eyes moving across their faces. "But if you stay," Maya continued, her voice taking on a different quality, harder, more intense, carrying absolute conviction. "If you decide to be part of this team, then for the next 36 hours you belong to me completely. You'll train harder than you've ever trained. You'll push past limits you thought were absolute. You'll learn things in hours that normally take months. And at the end of it, we're going to walk into enemy territory, extract our asset, and bring everyone home alive. All of us. No one left behind." The hangar fell silent again. Maya could hear the distant sound of the base waking up, vehicles starting, generators humming, the muffled voices of soldiers beginning their day. But in Hangar 7, 5 soldiers stood frozen, each wrestling with a decision that would define them. "I need to know right now," Maya said, "who's in." For a long moment, nobody moved. Maya could see the fear in Marcus's eyes, the calculation in Volkov's expression, the weight of consideration onto Sean's face. Her heart hammered against her ribs, wondering if she'd miscalculated, if the magnitude of what she was asking was too much, if they'd all walk out and leave her standing alone in this hangar with an impossible mission and no team. Then Staff Sergeant Pat Nguyen took one step forward. "I'm in," she said simply, her voice carrying the flat certainty of someone stating an obvious fact. "You need someone to fly you in and out of hell. I'm your pilot." Sergeant Louis Ochoa followed immediately, a slight smile crossing his scarred face. "Been blowing things up for boring reasons too long anyway. Might as well make it count. I'm in." Corporal James Deshawn was next, his hand still touching his medical kit. "Someone's got to keep you crazy people alive. I'm in." Specialist Anna Volkov adjusted her glasses, her analytical expression shifting into something that might have been excitement. "The tactical communication challenges alone make this fascinating. Plus, I've never hacked Taliban frequencies before. I'm definitely in." Four faces turned to Marcus, who stood frozen, his young face pale in the harsh lighting. Maya could see him trembling slightly, fear and doubt written clearly across his features. This was the moment that could break him or forge him into something stronger. Marcus started, his voice cracking slightly. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I'm 22 years old. I've never been in actual combat beyond convoy security. I'm probably the least qualified person here for something like this." "You're right," Maya said, not unkindly. "You are the least experienced, but you're also the best marksman on this entire base, and I've watched you help other soldiers improve their skills with patience and genuine care. Experience can be gained, Marcus. Natural ability and good character can't be taught." Marcus looked at his boots, then at the other four soldiers who'd already committed, then back at Maya. She could see him warring with himself, fear battling against something else, maybe pride, maybe duty, maybe just the desire to be worthy of being chosen. "My mom's going to kill me," Marcus said finally, and a shaky smile crossed his face. "But yeah, I'm in. Let's go get our guy." Maya felt something release in her chest, a tension she hadn't fully acknowledged until it eased. "Outstanding. Welcome to Operation Silent Guardian." She pulled out a rolled map and spread it across a nearby crate, the satellite imagery of the target compound visible in clear detail. "Gather around. We have 36 hours to become something extraordinary. Let's get started." The five soldiers moved closer, forming a tight circle around the map, their faces set with determination despite the fear Maya could still see in their eyes. They didn't know each other well yet. They didn't have the years of shared training and experience that made elite teams function seamlessly. But they had something else. They had chosen to be here, chosen to trust her, chosen to risk everything for someone they'd never met. "First thing you need to understand," Maya said, her finger tracing the compound's perimeter on the map, "is that we're not trying to be Nightshade. We're not trying to be something we're not. We're going to be something different. We're going to be FOB Sentinel's absolute best, operating with speed, precision, and the kind of trust that only comes from honest commitment to each other." She looked up at each of them in turn. "We have exactly 35 hours and 47 minutes until insertion. Time to find out what we're really made of." First 12 hours were brutal beyond anything the team had imagined. Maya drove them through room-clearing drills in the hangar's makeshift training area until their movements became automatic, their bodies responding faster than their conscious minds could process. She'd arranged the space with shipping containers and wooden barriers to simulate the compound's layout, forcing them to navigate tight corners, breach doorways, and clear rooms while maintaining communication and sector discipline. Again, Maya's voice cut through the hangar as Marcus hesitated for half a second before entering a simulated room. "That hesitation gets you killed and compromises the entire team. Volkov, you're supposed to be watching his six, not admiring the scenery. Deshawn, your medical kit is swinging. Secure it or it'll catch on something at the worst possible moment. Ochoa, good breach positioning, but you're telegraphing your movements. Pat, excellent coverage. Everyone else match her discipline. They ran the drill again, and again, and again. Each repetition revealed new mistakes, new inefficiencies, new gaps in their coordination. Maya was relentless, her Nightshade training evident in how she broke down complex tactical movements into digestible components, then rebuilt them into fluid sequences. She demonstrated each position herself, her movements economical and precise, showing them exactly what right looked like. By hour 6, they were exhausted but noticeably sharper. Marcus's hesitation had transformed into controlled aggression. Volkov moved like a shadow, always in the right position to provide support. Deshawn had learned to keep his medical kit tight against his body while maintaining weapon readiness. Ochoa's breach techniques had become smoother, more deceptive. Pat moved through the drills with the same unflappable competence she brought to flying, treating ground combat like another technical skill to master. "Water break," Maya called, and they collapsed against the hangar walls, gulping from canteens and trying to catch their breath. Sweat soaked through their uniforms despite the morning chill. Marcus's hands trembled slightly from fatigue and adrenaline. Even Ochoa, the oldest and most experienced, looked worn. Maya used the break to introduce the satellite imagery in more detail, spreading out the photos and tactical maps on a folding table. "The compound is here," she indicated, pointing to the cluster of buildings on elevated terrain. 5 structures total. Intelligence suggests Cypher is being held in this building, the largest one, probably in a basement or reinforced room on the ground floor. Guard rotation appears to be 8 to 12 hostiles at any given time, but that's an estimate based on limited surveillance. "What's our insertion method?" Pat asked, already thinking like a pilot planning an approach. "Low flight approach from the east," Maya explained, tracing the route on the map. "We'll come in just after midnight when visibility is minimal but we still have some ambient light. You'll drop us approximately 1 click from the target. We go in on foot, breach the compound, locate and secure Cypher, then move to the extraction point here." She indicated a clearing about 800 meters from the compound. "Pat brings the Black Hawk in. We load up under whatever fire we're taking, and we get the hell out." "What's our contingency if the Black Hawk is disabled or can't reach the extraction point?" Volkov asked, her analytical mind already identifying potential failure points. "Then we go to ground and fight our way to secondary extraction here," Maya pointed to an alternate location. "But that's a last resort. The goal is fast in, fast out, minimal engagement. We're not trying to win a battle, we're trying to ghost in, grab our asset and disappear before they fully understand what's happening." The afternoon transitioned into intensive weapons training. Marcus, despite his youth, became their unofficial marksmanship instructor, sharing techniques with a patience that surprised everyone. He worked with Ochoa on long-range shooting principles, helped Deshawn improve his trigger discipline, and even gave Volkov pointers on compensating for her slight frame's recoil management. "The key is breathing," Marcus explained, his earlier nervousness replaced by quiet confidence when discussing his area of expertise. "You want to fire between heartbeats in that natural pause. Your body wants to help you, you just have to let it." Maya watched this transformation with satisfaction. She'd known Marcus had the technical skills, but seeing him find his voice and contribute his knowledge was exactly what the team needed. Everyone had to feel valuable, had to understand their role was essential. Ochoa spent 2 hours with Maya planning breach charges and contingency demolitions. His experience showed as he calculated precise explosive loads, discussing fail-safes and redundancies, with the casual competence of someone who'd spent years making things explode safely and effectively. "The main door here is reinforced," Ochoa said, studying the intelligence photos. "But these hinges are external mount, probably Soviet-era installation. I can take them out with shaped charges, cleaner, quieter, and faster than trying to blow through the actual door. We breach in 3 seconds instead of 10. "What if the charges fail?" Maya asked, testing his preparation. Backup mechanical breach tools, Ochoa replied immediately. Halligan bar and sledgehammer. Slower, louder, but reliable. And if that fails, we have det cord for the wall adjacent to the door. Multiple options, multiple paths to success. As evening fell, they transitioned to communications protocols. Volkov took the lead, her technical expertise evident as she explained frequencies, encryption methods, and the portable jamming equipment she'd be carrying. I can disrupt their communications within a 300-meter radius, Volkov explained, her fingers dancing across the equipment interface. But it's not selective. We'll also be operating under comms blackout except for our encrypted frequency. That means perfect discipline. We talk only when necessary, keep transmissions brief, and trust our pre-established signals. She spent an hour drilling them on hand signals until they could communicate complex tactical information silently. Stack up, breach ready, enemy contact, hold position, move forward, casualty, extraction needed. Each signal had to be instantly recognizable even in darkness and chaos. Deshawn worked with each team member individually, teaching them basic combat medicine that went beyond their standard training. I can't be everywhere at once, he explained while showing Marcus how to pack a wound. If someone gets hit, the closest person needs to provide immediate care until I can get there. These first 60 seconds often determine if someone lives or dies. He was methodical and patient, teaching them to recognize arterial bleeding versus venous, how to apply tourniquets properly, how to maintain airways, how to treat for shock. His hands were steady and sure, and his calm demeanor made even the most disturbing scenarios seem manageable. By 2200 hours, they'd been training for 18 consecutive hours. Every member of the team was operating on fumes, pushed far beyond normal endurance. Maya called a halt and ordered them to eat and get 4 hours of mandatory sleep. They protested weakly but complied, too exhausted to truly argue. Maya stayed awake, reviewing intelligence updates and refining the operational plan. General Harrison visited briefly, observing from the hangar entrance without interrupting. When Maya noticed him, he simply nodded once, a gesture of support and confidence that meant more than words could convey. At 200 hours, Maya woke them for the second day of training. They assembled with visible reluctance, bodies protesting the brief rest period that had somehow made them feel worse rather than better. But Maya noticed something different in their eyes now, less fear, more determination. They'd survived day one. They were beginning to believe they might actually be capable of this. Yesterday was about individual skills, Maya announced as they gathered in the hangar. Today is about becoming a team. Today we learn to trust each other with our lives. The second day's training intensified focus on coordination and trust building. Maya ran them through scenarios where each person had to depend completely on their teammates, blindfolded navigation drills where they had to trust verbal guidance, wounded soldier carries where they had to trust someone else's strength, and complex tactical problems where success required perfect synchronization. During one drill, Marcus froze when simulating providing cover fire for Deshawn's approach to a casualty. The fear that had plagued him initially resurfaced, manifesting as paralysis at a critical moment. "I can't," Marcus gasped, lowering his weapon. "What if I mess up? What if I freeze in the real thing and someone dies because of me?" The team stopped, gathering around him. Maya watched carefully, ready to intervene, but hoping they'd find their own way through this moment. It was Pat who spoke first. "You know what my instructor told me when I first started flying," Pat said quietly. "He said fear doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. The question isn't whether you're scared. The question is whether you'll act anyway." "I'm terrified too," Deshawn admitted, his voice steady despite the admission. "Every time we run these drills, I'm thinking about what happens if I can't save someone, if my skills aren't enough, if I freeze when it matters most." "We're all scared," Volkov added, her analytical facade cracking slightly. I've been running probability calculations in my head for 24 hours straight. The odds aren't good. We all know that. Ochoa moved closer to Marcus, his scarred face serious. You want to know a secret, kid? I've been doing this kind of work for over a decade, and I'm still scared every single time. Fear isn't the enemy. Letting fear control you is the enemy. Maya decided it was time to share something she'd been carrying since Kabul. She sat down on the concrete floor, gesturing for the others to join her. They formed a loose circle, the formal training structure giving way to something more human and honest. 2 weeks ago in Kabul, I made a decision that saved 3 hostages but got my team leader killed and put my best friend in a hospital bed with a bullet near his spine, Maya said, her voice quiet but clear. Every night since then, I've replayed those 30 seconds in my mind, wondering if I could have done something differently. If I'd waited, if I'd called it differently, if I'd been faster or smarter or better, maybe Captain Torres would still be alive. Maybe Joel wouldn't be facing months of rehabilitation and possible medical discharge. She paused, making eye contact with each of them. But here's what I've learned, Maya continued. The weight of command, the burden of making decisions that affect other people's lives, it never gets lighter. You never stop second-guessing yourself. You never stop seeing the faces of people who got hurt because of choices you made. But you make the decisions anyway because someone has to. Because the alternative, doing nothing, letting fear paralyze you, abandoning people who need you, that's worse than any mistake you might make trying. Marcus was listening intently, his young face serious. I've got nightmares too, Marcus, Maya said directly to him. I wake up hearing Tor's voice, seeing Martinez get hit, replaying every decision. But you know what helps? Knowing that Jennifer Hartley went home to her husband and 2 kids. Knowing that David Chen got to finish the journalism project he'd been working on for 2 years. Knowing that Sarah Mitchell got to attend her daughter's college graduation last week because we brought her home alive. The fear doesn't go away, Pat added, but it becomes something you carry with you instead of something that controls you. It keeps you sharp, keeps you careful, reminds you that what we're doing matters. The team sat in silence for a moment, each processing the vulnerability and honesty that had been shared. Then Volkov spoke, her voice carrying a determination that hadn't been there before. We're not Nightshade, she said firmly. We're not special forces with years of training. We're a medic from Detroit, a communications specialist from Boston, a marksman from Ohio, a demolitions expert from Texas, and a pilot from California. We're normal soldiers who have been asked to do something extraordinary. But we're also something better, Deshawn picked up the thought. We're brothers and sisters who choose each other, who choose to stand together even when we're scared, who choose to bring Cypher home because it's right, not because it's easy. Tomorrow we go into enemy territory, Ochoa said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Maybe some of us get hurt. Maybe things go wrong, but we don't abandon each other, ever. That's not negotiable. Marcus took a shaky breath, then nodded slowly. Okay, he said, his voice stronger now. Okay, tomorrow we bring Cypher home, together or not at all. Maya felt something shift in the hangar, an almost tangible change in the team's energy. They'd moved past being 5 individuals thrown together by circumstance. They were becoming something unified, forged by shared fear and shared commitment. Let's get back to work, Maya said, standing and extending a hand to help Marcus up. We've got 12 hours left to make sure everyone comes home alive. They returned to training with renewed intensity, the vulnerability they'd shared translating into deeper trust and sharper coordination. By the time General Harrison arrived for the final briefing at 1400 hours, they moved together with a synchronization that surprised even Maya. Harrison watched them run through a complete mission simulation, insertion, approach, breach, extraction, and when they finished, he pulled Maya aside. That's not the same team I saw yesterday, he said quietly. You've done something remarkable here, Staff Sergeant. They did it themselves, sir, Maya replied honestly. I just gave them the framework. They built the trust. At 1800 hours, with 6 hours until insertion, Maya ordered the team to rest, eat, and prepare their gear. They moved through the preparations with quiet efficiency, each lost in their own thoughts about what the night would bring. As darkness fell over Fob Sentinel, 6 soldiers prepared to attempt the impossible. They were scared. They were undertrained. They were facing overwhelming odds. But they had chosen each other. And sometimes that made all the difference. The Black Hawk's rotors cut through the midnight air with a rhythmic thump that Maya felt in her chest like a second heartbeat. She sat in the crew compartment, watching her team make final equipment checks with movements that had become second nature over the past 36 hours. Pat Nguyen's hands were steady on the controls up front, flying barely 50 feet above the rugged Afghan terrain, navigating by night vision and instinct through mountain passes that would terrify most pilots. But Pat's expression remained calm, almost serene, as if she were taking a leisurely flight rather than threading a helicopter through hostile territory in complete darkness. Maya's tactical radio crackled softly. 5 minutes to drop zone, Pat's voice came through, professional and unhurried. Weather's holding, no radar contacts, looking good for insertion. Copy, Maya responded, then switched to the team frequency. 5 minutes, final checks. Around her, the team moved through their pre-rehearsed routines. Deshawn adjusted his medical kit one last time, his fingers touching each critical item: tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, chest seals, airway management tools. Volkov checked her communications equipment and jamming device, her face illuminated by the soft glow of diagnostic screens. Marcus sat with his rifle across his lap, breathing slowly and deliberately, the meditation technique Maya had taught him to manage pre-combat anxiety. Ochoa examined his breach charges with the careful attention of an artist inspecting his tools, ensuring every connection was perfect, every timer set correctly. The helicopter banked slightly, following the terrain contours, and through the open door Maya could see the mountains silhouetted against the star-filled sky. Somewhere ahead in that darkness was the compound where Cypher waited, possibly injured, almost certainly terrified, hoping that someone was coming for him. She thought about the 18 months he'd spent in deep cover, the daily risk of exposure, the intelligence he'd provided that had saved countless lives. They couldn't let him die alone in some Taliban cell. 3 minutes, Pat announced, beginning descent to drop zone. Maya felt the helicopter's attitude shift as Pat brought them lower, skimming even closer to the ground. The pilot was good, better than good. She flew like the helicopter was an extension of her body, making micro-adjustments that kept them invisible to radar and below visual detection range. "Listen up," Maya said over the team frequency, her voice carrying the calm authority they'd come to trust. "Everything we've trained for comes down to the next hour. We stick to the plan, we trust each other, we bring Cypher home. No heroes, no improvisation unless absolutely necessary. We're professionals executing a professional operation." She paused, making eye contact with each team member in the dim red lighting of the crew compartment. "But if things go sideways," Maya continued, "remember what we promised each other. Nobody gets left behind. We all come home together or we don't come home at all." "Hua," Deshawn said quietly, and the others echoed him, the traditional army affirmation carrying more weight than usual. 1 minute, Pat's voice cut through. "Drop zone coming up. Winds are calm, visibility is minimal, looking perfect for insertion." The helicopter flared slightly, bleeding off speed as Pat brought them into a hover. Maya could see the ground below through the open door, rocky terrain dotted with scrub brush, exactly as the satellite imagery had shown. No signs of enemy activity, no lights, no movement, just darkness and silence. 30 seconds, Pat announced. Maya stood, and the team rose with her in perfect synchronization. They'd practiced this insertion sequence dozens of times until they could execute it blindfolded. The helicopter settled into a low hover, just 8 feet above the ground, close enough to fast rope down in seconds, high enough to avoid dust signature that might give away their position. "Green light," Pat said. "Go, go, go." Maya went first, fast roping down into the darkness with practiced efficiency. Her boots hit the ground and she immediately moved to establish a security perimeter, weapon up, scanning for threats. Deshawn came down right behind her, followed by Marcus, Volkov, and finally Ochoa. The entire insertion took less than 15 seconds. The helicopter lifted immediately, Pat taking it back up and away to orbit at a safe distance until called for extraction. The sound of rotors faded quickly, leaving the team in near total silence broken only by the soft whisper of wind across the rocks. Maya activated her night vision, and the world transformed into shades of green. She could see her team spread in a defensive perimeter, exactly as trained. 5 sets of eyes scanning different sectors, 5 weapons ready, 5 soldiers moving with the coordinated precision of a unit that had trained together for years rather than hours. "Comms check," Maya whispered into her radio. "2 clear," Deshawn responded. "3 clear," Marcus said, his voice steadier than Maya had expected. 4 clear, Volkov confirmed. 5 clear, Ochoa finished. "Pat, you copy?" Maya asked. "Lima Charlie, ground team," Pat responded, her voice clear despite the distance. "I'm orbiting at Angels 3, ready for extraction on your call. Good hunting." Maya checked her GPS, confirming their position. The compound was 1.2 kilometers northeast, exactly where it should be. She signaled the team to move, and they fell into patrol formation automatically. Maya on point, Marcus providing rear security, the others spaced at intervals that maintained mutual support while minimizing vulnerability to area weapons. They moved through the darkness like shadows, using the terrain for concealment, avoiding skylining themselves on ridges, stopping frequently to listen and observe. The 36 hours of intensive training had transformed them from individuals into something cohesive and deadly. Every hand signal was instantly understood. Every movement was coordinated. When Maya held up a fist to signal halt, all 5 stopped simultaneously and dropped into defensive positions without a sound. After 40 minutes of careful movement, the compound came into view. Maya signaled the team to take cover behind a rocky outcropping about 200 meters from the target. Through her night vision, she could see the cluster of buildings exactly as the satellite imagery had shown. 5 structures surrounded by a wall approximately 8 feet high, guard towers at 2 corners, a main gate on the south side. "Volkov, give me a comm scan," Maya whispered. Volkov activated her equipment, the sophisticated electronics analyzing radio frequencies in the area. After 30 seconds, she tapped Maya's shoulder twice, the signal for enemy communications detected. She held up 4 fingers, then pointed to different areas of the compound. 4 separate radio contacts, meaning at least 4 guards actively communicating. 4 confirmed hostiles, probably more, Maya breathed into the radio. "Marcus, what do you see?" Marcus had his rifle scope up, using the magnification to study the compound despite the darkness. 2 guards visible in the north tower, 1 at the main gate, 1 patrolling the western wall. "Can't see inside the courtyard from this angle, but assume more inside the buildings." "Ochoa breach assessment?" Maya asked. Ochoa studied the compound through his own optics. "Main gate is reinforced, but the hinges are external mount, just like we thought. I can drop it in under 5 seconds. Side wall by the largest building has a weak point, looks like recent construction, probably repair work. That's our contingency breach if the gate is compromised." "Deshawn ready?" Maya asked the medic. "Ready," he confirmed quietly. "Medical kit staged, trauma supplies accessible, prepared for casualty treatment under fire if necessary." Maya took a slow breath, running through the plan one final time in her mind. Volkov would initiate communications jamming on her signal. They'd approach from the east, using the terrain for concealment until they were within 50 meters. Ochoa would breach the main gate while Marcus provided overwatch from an elevated position. They'd enter the courtyard, neutralize any immediate threats, and breach the main building where intelligence suggested Cypher was held. Locate the asset, secure him, move to the extraction point 800 meters southwest. Pat would bring the Black Hawk in under whatever fire they were taking. Simple in concept, impossibly complex in execution. Remember, Maya said softly, her voice steady despite her racing heart, we're not trying to kill everyone in that compound. We're trying to ghost in, grab Cypher, and ghost out before they understand what's happening. Speed and precision over firepower. Questions. Silence. They understood their roles, understood the stakes, understood the risks. Volkov, initiate jamming on my mark, Maya ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. Volkov activated the jamming equipment, and somewhere in that compound, radios suddenly filled with static, and Taliban guards realized their communications had just gone dead. The team had maybe 30 seconds before confusion turned to alarm, and alarm turned to heightened security. Move, Maya commanded, and they flowed forward like water, using every shadow and depression for concealment. They covered the distance to the compound in 90 seconds, their approach silent and invisible. Marcus peeled off to establish overwatch position on a small rise that gave him clear sight lines to the courtyard. Ochoa moved to the gate, his hands already pulling out the shaped charges that would take down the barrier. Maya checked her watch. 23 seconds since jamming initiated. The guards in the tower were gesturing, clearly trying to understand why their radios had stopped working. The patrol on the western wall had paused, looking confused. Breach in 5, Maya whispered. 4, 3, 2, 1. Ochoa's charges detonated with sharp cracks that split the night. The gate's hinges blew apart in showers of sparks, and the heavy barrier sagged inward. Maya was moving before the sound faded, flowing through the breach with Deshawn and Volkov right behind her. The courtyard erupted in chaos, guards shouting, weapons being raised, lights beginning to flicker on in the buildings. Marcus's rifle spoke once from Overwatch, a single suppressed shot, and the guard in the north tower dropped. Another shot, and the second tower guard fell. The guard at the gate was raising his weapon when Volkov put 2 rounds center mass, her training overriding hesitation. Main building now, Maya ordered, already moving toward the largest structure where intelligence said Cypher would be held. Ochoa hit the door with a breaching charge and it blew inward. They flowed inside in perfect stack formation, clearing each room with brutal efficiency. 2 hostiles in the entrance hall went down before they could fire. A third appeared from a side room, and Deshawn dropped him with a controlled pair of shots. Basement access, Volkov called out, spotting a heavy door reinforced with metal bars. I've got it, Ochoa said, already moving forward with another charge. 30 seconds. Gunfire erupted from somewhere outside, more guards emerging from the other buildings, responding to the attack even without communications. Marcus's rifle continued its methodical work from Overwatch, each shot precisely placed, buying them time with every trigger pull. Ochoa's charge blew the basement door and Maya descended the stairs into darkness, her weapon light cutting through the gloom. The basement was small, dank, smelling of human waste and blood. And there, chained to a wall in the corner, was a man who could only be Cypher. He looked up as their lights found him, his face battered and swollen, one eye completely closed from beating, his lips split and bleeding. But his other eye focused on Maya's Nightshade badge, and something like hope flickered across his ruined features. Cypher, Maya asked, already moving to him. Took you long enough, he croaked, attempting a smile that made him wince in pain. I was starting to think I'd have to rescue myself. Deshawn, medical assessment, Maya ordered as the medic dropped beside the asset. Deshawn worked quickly, checking vitals, assessing injuries. Multiple contusions, possible broken ribs, signs of dehydration and recent torture, but he's stable enough to move. We need to get him out of here now. Ochoa produced bolt cutters and made quick work of the chains. Cypher sagged as he was freed, and Deshawn caught him, supporting his weight. "Can you walk?" Maya asked. "Can I crawl toward freedom?" "Absolutely," Cypher gasped. "Walking might be optimistic, but I'll make it work." The gunfire outside was intensifying. Maya's radio crackled, Marcus's voice, urgent but controlled. Multiple hostiles converging from the east buildings. "I count at least 8, maybe more. You need to move now." "Copy, extraction in progress," Maya responded. She switched frequencies. "Pat, we have the package. Coming to extraction point hot. Be ready for immediate dust-off." "Roger that," Pat's voice came back instantly. "I'm already inbound. Extraction point in 3 minutes." They helped Cypher up the stairs, Deshawn supporting most of his weight. The CIA operative's breathing was labored but determined. Whatever these people had done to him over the past days hadn't broken his will. They emerged into the courtyard and immediately took fire from the eastern buildings. Rounds cracked past, impacting the walls around them. Volkov returned fire, her weapon chattering in controlled bursts. Ochoa laid down covering fire while they moved toward the breach point. "Marcus, we're coming out," Maya called into the radio. "I see you," Marcus responded. "Shifting fire to your left, 3 hostiles in the second building window." His rifle cracked repeatedly, and the incoming fire from that position ceased abruptly. They made it through the breach and into the open ground beyond the compound. Behind them, the compound was fully alert, muzzle flashes lighting up multiple positions as Taliban fighters responded to the assault. But the team was already moving, Deshawn and Ochoa supporting Cypher between them, Maya and Volkov providing covering fire, Marcus's overwatch shots continuing to suppress the pursuit. "Extraction point 200 meters, Maya called out. She could hear the Black Hawk now, the distinctive sound of rotors cutting through the night air. Pat was coming in fast, lower than was safe, putting herself at risk to reach them faster. Gunfire followed them, rounds cracking through the air, kicking up dirt around their feet. Maya felt something tug at her sleeve but didn't slow down. They had to reach that extraction point. They had to get everyone out. 100 meters, Volkov gasped, her legs pumping despite the weight of her equipment. The Black Hawk appeared like a vengeful angel, Pat bringing it into a combat landing at the extraction point with the kind of precision that defied belief. The door gunner opened up with the M240, suppressing fire raking back toward the compound. "Go, go, go," Maya shouted, and they sprinted the final distance. Deshawn and Ochoa lifted Cypher into the helicopter. Volkov dove in after them. Marcus came running from his overwatch position, his rifle still across his chest. Maya provided covering fire as he reached the helicopter and pulled himself aboard. "We're all in," Maya shouted into the radio, diving through the door herself. "Hold on," Pat's voice came back, and the Black Hawk leaped into the air, climbing sharply while banking away from the compound. Gunfire continued, rounds pinging off the helicopter's armored hull, but Pat was already accelerating, putting distance between them and the threat. Within seconds they were out of effective range, climbing into the safety of darkness and altitude. Maya collapsed against the bulkhead, her chest heaving, adrenaline making her hands shake. She looked around the crew compartment, counting heads. Deshawn was working on Cypher, establishing an IV line. Volkov sat with her eyes closed, catching her breath. Ochoa was reloading his weapon with methodical precision. Marcus stared at his rifle as if surprised to find it in his hands. Everyone was here. Everyone was alive. "Head count," Maya ordered, needing to hear it confirmed. "1 good," Deshawn called out. 2 good, Volkov responded. 3 good, Marcus said, his voice shaky but determined. 4 good, Ochoa confirmed. 5 good, Pat's voice came from the cockpit. And we've got our package. Mission complete, heading home. Maya felt something break inside her chest, tension releasing, fear draining away, replaced by overwhelming relief and fierce pride. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, with minimal training and maximum courage, they'd brought Cypher home. She looked at Cypher, who was looking back at her with his one good eye. Despite the pain he was obviously in, despite the trauma of captivity and torture, he managed a genuine smile. "Thank you," he whispered. "I knew someone would come. I just didn't know it would be you magnificent bastards." "We don't leave people behind," Maya said simply. The Black Hawk raced through the night toward Fob Sentinel, carrying 6 exhausted soldiers and 1 rescued CIA operative. Behind them, the compound receded into darkness, but ahead, lights were visible. Home, safety, mission accomplished. They'd started as strangers thrown together by circumstance. They'd become something more, a team forged in 36 hours of brutal training and 1 impossible mission. Not Nightshade. Something better. Something earned through choice, through trust, through the decision to stand together when everything said to walk away. As the helicopter's rotors beat steadily through the Afghan night, Maya allowed herself one moment of quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring debriefings and reports and consequences. But tonight, everyone was coming home. Tonight, they were heroes. 3 weeks later, Staff Sergeant Maya Chen stood at attention in General Harrison's temporary office at Bagram Airfield, the morning sun streaming through the windows and casting long shadows across the polished floor. Her team stood beside her in a precise line. Deshawn, Volkov, Marcus, Ochoa, and Pat, all wearing their dress uniforms, medals gleaming on their chests. The cramped office was filled beyond capacity with personnel who'd found reasons to witness this particular ceremony. Word had spread quickly about what this unlikely team had accomplished. General Harrison stood before them, his weathered face betraying none of the satisfaction Maya suspected he felt. Behind him, Lieutenant Colonel Hendricks, the XO who'd relegated Maya to sandbag duty, stood with an expression somewhere between embarrassment and grudging respect. The investigation board's report sat on Harrison's desk, its conclusions clear and unequivocal. Staff Sergeant Chen's actions in Kabul had been not only justified but exemplary, demonstrating the kind of tactical decision-making that saved lives and accomplished missions under impossible circumstances. "At ease," Harrison commanded, and they relaxed fractionally, though the formality of the moment kept everyone's posture rigid. Harrison picked up the investigation report, holding it for a moment as if weighing its physical mass against its implications. 3 weeks ago, this board of inquiry recommended that Staff Sergeant Chen face administrative punishment for reckless disregard of established protocol during the Kabul hostage rescue operation. His voice carried across the crowded office, each word measured and deliberate. The board's preliminary findings suggested that her decision to breach 30 seconds ahead of schedule without proper authorization demonstrated poor judgment and insufficient respect for chain of command. Maya kept her eyes forward, but she could feel the tension in the room ratcheting up. Everyone knew where this was going, but the formality had to be observed. "Yesterday, I received a communication from Staff Sergeant Joel Martinez," Harrison continued, and Maya's heart skipped. She hadn't spoken to Joel since the day after Operation Silent Guardian, a brief phone call where he'd insisted she stop apologizing for his injuries. "Martinez is currently undergoing rehabilitation at Walter Reed Medical Center. The doctors expect him to make a full recovery and return to active duty within 6 months." Harrison paused, letting that sink in. Full recovery, 6 months. The words were like a weight lifting from Maya's chest. "Martinez provided detailed testimony to the investigation board," Harrison said. "I'm going to read part of it because I think everyone in this room needs to hear it." He pulled out a document and began reading. Staff Sergeant Chen's decision to breach early in Kabul was not reckless. It was the only decision that made tactical sense given the rapidly evolving situation. As her teammate and friend, I trusted her judgment completely in that moment, and I trust it now. "The injuries I sustained were not the result of her leadership, but the natural consequence of combat operations against a hostile enemy. I would serve under her command again without hesitation, and I consider it an honor to have been part of her team. Maya blinked hard, fighting the moisture gathering in her eyes. Joel had written that. Joel, who'd taken 3 bullets and spent weeks in a hospital bed, had defended her without reservation. The investigation board has reviewed Martinez's testimony along with statements from Captain Tor's family, the 3 rescued hostages, and multiple tactical experts, Harrison continued. Their final conclusion, issued 2 days ago, is that Staff Sergeant Chen demonstrated exceptional leadership, sound tactical judgment, and the kind of decisive action that exemplifies the best traditions of Army Special Operations. All charges and recommendations for punishment have been dismissed. A quiet murmur of approval rippled through the assembled personnel. Hendrix's face had gone slightly red, though whether from shame or anger, Maya couldn't tell. But, Harrison said, and the room fell silent again, the Kabul operation, while vindicated, is not why we're here today. He gestured toward Cypher, who stood near the back of the room, still bearing visible marks of his ordeal but looking remarkably better than he had 3 weeks ago. We're here because of Operation Silent Guardian, an extraction mission that succeeded against overwhelming odds through the extraordinary efforts of 6 soldiers who refused to accept that something was impossible. Harrison moved to stand directly in front of the team. When I authorized Operation Silent Guardian, I was gambling my career on an untested hypothesis that elite capability isn't just about extensive training and specialized credentials. It's about character, determination, and leadership that can forge excellence from unexpected sources in compressed timeframes. He looked at each team member in turn. Corporal Deshawn, your medical care under fire saved Cypher's life and ensured the team suffered no serious casualties despite significant hostile contact. Specialist Volkov, your communications expertise and technical adaptability disabled enemy coordination and provided critical intelligence throughout the operation. Private First Class Webb, your precision marksmanship neutralized multiple threats and provided the covering fire that made extraction possible. Sergeant Ochoa, your demolitions work was textbook perfect, creating the breaches that allowed rapid access and egress. Staff Sergeant Nguyen, your flying was nothing short of miraculous, inserting and extracting the team under fire with the kind of skill that saves lives. He turned to Maya. And Staff Sergeant Chen, you took 5 soldiers with no special operations training and in 36 hours created a team capable of executing a mission that challenges even our most elite units. That's not just leadership, that's transformation. Harrison reached for a small box on his desk. By order of the Secretary of Defense and on recommendation of the Commander of Special Operations Command, the following awards are hereby presented. He opened the box, revealing a row of medals. For exceptional valor and achievement in combat operations, each member of Operation Silent Guardian is awarded the Bronze Star with Valor device. One by one, Harrison pinned the medals to their uniforms. When he reached Maya, he paused before attaching the medal, his eyes meeting hers. "Welcome back, Staff Sergeant," he said quietly for her ears only. "You never should have left." When the medals were all pinned, Harrison stepped back and pulled out another document. "Additionally, Staff Sergeant Chen, you are hereby reinstated to full active duty status with Nightshade Unit. All restrictions removed, all investigative holds lifted. Your personnel file will reflect the commendation of this command and the gratitude of everyone whose lives were saved by your actions in both Kabul and Operation Silent Guardian." Maya felt the words wash over her like absolution. Reinstated, cleared, vindicated. But Harrison wasn't finished. Furthermore, Nightshade Command has reviewed your training methodology and the results achieved in Operation Silent Guardian. They've requested that you develop a new training protocol based on your compressed timeline approach, proving that elite operators can emerge from unconventional sources when properly identified and led. This protocol will be designated the Sentinel Method and will be integrated into special operations training across multiple units. The room erupted in applause. Maya stood rigid, overwhelmed by the implications. Her desperate gamble, her 36-hour crucible, was being recognized not as an aberration, but as innovation worth replicating. "One final matter," Harrison said, raising his hand for silence. "The members of Operation Silent Guardian have been offered the opportunity to transfer to Special Operations units based on their performance. Each has declined, choosing instead to remain with their current assignments at FOB Sentinel." He smiled slightly. "However, they have requested permission to continue training together as an auxiliary quick reaction force, available for time-sensitive operations requiring immediate deployment. I've approved this request. Congratulations, team. You're now officially designated as Sentinel Force, a rapid response capability under the direct authority of Special Operations Command." Maya looked at her team in surprise. They discussed this without her, but as she met their eyes, she saw the determination there. They'd tasted something extraordinary, had discovered capabilities they hadn't known they possessed. They weren't ready to return to being just regular soldiers performing routine duties. After the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed, the team gathered in a quiet corner of the base. Cypher joined them, moving carefully but under his own power. "I never properly thanked you," Cypher said, his voice still rough from his ordeal. "The intelligence I was carrying when they grabbed me has already prevented 2 major attacks. The network I'd infiltrated is being rolled up as we speak. 18 months of work didn't die in that cell because you came for me." "That's what we do," Deshawn said simply. "We don't leave people behind." Cypher extended his hand to Maya. "I heard about Kabul, about the investigation, about what you were going through when Harrison asked you to lead this mission. You could have said no. You could have protected yourself and let someone else take the risk. But you didn't." Maya shook his hand firmly. "A very wise woman once told me that the best operators trust their instincts, make the call, and live with the consequences. I'm just trying to live up to her example." Later that afternoon, Maya found herself walking past the eastern wall where she'd been filling sandbags just 4 weeks earlier. The fortification stood strong, precisely stacked, a testament to the work she'd done during those dark days of investigation and doubt. She touched the Nightshade badge on her vest, feeling its weight differently now. The badge meant something more than it had before. It wasn't just a symbol of elite status or specialized training. It was a reminder that excellence came in many forms, that leadership meant recognizing potential in unexpected places, that the most important missions were often accomplished by people who'd been told they weren't qualified for them. A convoy of new arrivals rolled through the main gate, fresh-faced soldiers on their first deployment, uncertain and nervous, carrying that mixture of excitement and fear that characterized everyone's introduction to combat zones. Maya watched them disembark, seeing in their faces the same raw potential she'd recognized in her team. Marcus approached, his rifle slung over his shoulder with the casual confidence of someone who'd proven themselves under fire. "Ma'am, the team's gathering for weapons maintenance and mission review. You coming?" "In a minute," Maya said, still watching the new arrivals. "Just thinking." "About what?" Marcus asked. Maya smiled. "About which of those kids might be extraordinary if someone gives them the chance to prove it." Marcus followed her gaze, understanding dawning on his face. "You think one of them could be the next me, the scared kid who almost walked away but decided to stay?" "Maybe," Maya said. "Or the next Deshawn or Volkov or Ochoa. The point is, we don't know who they'll become until someone believes in them enough to find out." She turned to face Marcus fully. 3 weeks ago, you told me you were just a 22-year-old marksman who'd never been in real combat. Now you're part of an official rapid response force with a bronze star on your chest. What changed?" Marcus thought about it for a moment. Someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. You gave me a chance to be more than I thought I could be." "Exactly," Maya said. "And that's what we do now. We watch for potential. We recognize capability that others miss. We give people chances to become extraordinary." As they walked toward the hangar where the rest of Sentinel Force waited, Maya felt a sense of purpose that went beyond individual missions or operations. They'd created something new, not a replacement for traditional special operations units, but a complement to them. A force that proved excellence could be forged quickly when you had the right people, the right leadership, and the right motivation. The sun was setting over Fob Sentinel, painting the mountains in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in those mountains, there were threats waiting, operations that would need executing, people who would need rescuing. And when those moments came, Sentinel Force would be ready. Not because they were the most highly trained, not because they had years of specialized experience, but because they'd chosen each other, chosen to be extraordinary, chosen to prove that the impossible was just another mission waiting to be accomplished. Maya touched her Nightshade badge one final time, then entered the hangar where her team, her family waited. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new opportunities to do the impossible. But tonight they were together, they were vindicated, they were exactly where they belonged. And that, Maya thought, was the truest victory of all. The end.